This is Professor Mike Ventola from Sandhills Community College, bringing you Grass of the Week. Welcome to the second major part of our Grass of the Week series. Today we're going to start talking about the warm season grasses, Cynodon dactylon, Bermudagrass, the major staple of golf courses, home lawns, and especially athletic fields in the southeastern United States. Warm season grasses, as you can see here, this is a picture of Pinehurst number 4 under construction. This part here, that's putting green, so that's where cool season grass is going to be, but everywhere else there's turf. This is July in Pinehurst, and you can see this green grass that's starting to come in aggressively everywhere is Bermudagrass. One of my favorite golf courses in Charleston, this is Bulls Bay. You can see the fairways here are Bermudagrass, where there is a little bit of burning in, or lines can be shown if they drive the mowers in the same spot. It's an arguable point. I'm not a big fan of it, but they like to get some lines. So Bermuda's there. Another warm season grass is our zoysia grass, which I'm going to talk about next week. Makes, in my opinion, one of the best collar grasses, and then we've got centipede grasses we're going to talk about in 2 weeks out in the rough. So this is Bermudagrass putting green, Bermudagrass collars, Bermudagrass fairways, Bermudagrass tees, and then some other assorted warm season grasses for texture. But you can see Bermudagrass is the workhorse of a golf course in the Charleston area. One of the disadvantages of this grass is in January, it's dormant, it's brown. It's not as bad a putting surface as most people would think, playing surface, excuse me. In fact, it's a pretty good playing surface. Here's one of my former students, Fred, out at Country Club in North Carolina, and you can see they've controlled most of the weeds, and this Bermuda is getting ready to bust out of its dormancy. Pinehurst number 2, the major grass there is Bermudagrass. This is in U.S. Open years in 1999 and then again in 2005. They did not overseed. This was so that they can chemically control all of the winter annual weeds, all of your annual, any grass that grows in the winter. You can spray a low rate of Roundup on the Bermudagrass in January, and because the Bermudagrass is not growing, it does not kill the Bermudagrass, but it kills all the other weeds. So that's a nice use of non-selective herbicide, is a selective herbicide, and get things really cleaned up for a good spring when they want to be ready for the Open. On off U.S. Open years, Pinehurst number 2 still overseeds, because that's, again, this area, the high money is in the spring and the fall, and they feel they need green grass for that. So you can argue back and forth that the overseeding of the Bermudagrass does hold it back. We have research that shows that, but very different metabolisms, and as you know from your lecture, the difference between the C4 and C3 metabolism is great. This picture here is one of my favorites because it's early season, Country Club in North Carolina. You can see the dogwoods are starting to come in. And this is a Bermudagrass rough and Bermudagrass fairway. So what's the difference? There's nothing. Remember that new sheath comes up to the old sheath. So this was not mowed down as much in the fall. So there's much of the old dead grass there. The old dead grass had been mowed off here, so the new blades had already gotten through the sheath and started to grow. So this is a good example of you can see that the new blades are starting to poke out in here in little areas, and it'll catch up. But you can see height of cut and then growth, how we talked about the new. If we've got an old dead leaf here, the new leaf is going to grow up through that. So the taller that is, the longer it's going to take to show itself, and the longer it's going to take to start photosynthesizing and show that it's green. So I like this picture quite a bit. This is the reason people pay the big money to come to Pinehurst and play golf in the spring. So our warm season grasses, they're generally going to be hairier than the cool season grasses. That's one of your big first IDs. Is it warm season or cool season? Then you're going to go, is it rolled or is it folded? But the warm seasons generally that we talk about are going to have hairs. They're going to be much more aggressive in June, July, and August. These grasses are going to go during those months. And they're best adapted between 80 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit compared to the cool season grasses, which are between 65 to 75. So you see fall to summer to spring, we're going to have a shift, and I think a graph that we showed in class will help you understand that. So it pretty much, when I was at Michigan State, we said that Bermuda grass was folded. Down here, the grass keys out for both folded and rolled, so you don't have to worry. But zoysia is definitely rolled, where Bermuda is going to be more folded than zoysia. So that's one of my main IDs between those two. It has hairs on the ligule. It has both rhizomes and stolons. You can see here aggressive stolons. That's one of the pluses of the grass, is it fills in, but it's also one of the minuses. This is often unsightly, and we spend many, many dollars cleaning up that edge of bunkers in the sandhills. And then this seed head. The seed head comes up, and there's between 3 to 5 spikes coming off that whorl. Even on the hybrid grasses, sterile hybrids, which are basically a donkey, we take Cynodon transvalensis and one of the other Bermuda grasses, cross those, and these seeds are not viable, but there still are seed heads that come off of that. So you want to know that the hybrids are donkeys. They don't produce seed. It's great for the seed, for the sod producers, because when you need to get these grasses, you need to get them from a reputable place, and they're propagated vegetatively. That's their major business. But there's 3 major parts to the Bermuda grass. There's the leaf, which is pretty good looking. It's not as dark. If you grew up on Kentucky bluegrass, that Kentucky bluegrass is going to be much darker. Again, the Cadillac. This is like more a Chrysler leaf, but it still can look pretty good, as I'm going to show you in some slides later. But it also has these rhizomes, or these stolons, excuse me, the stolons, which are somewhat unsightly and can be pretty aggressive, and then seed heads. And the seed head, one of the problems with the seed head is if we're mowing with the reel mower, and the reel is this high, and then the bed knife is there, and if the seed head is too high, it doesn't go into the mower. It just flips out. So you might have to mow your rough twice when the seed heads are out. You might have to mow it with the reel mower to get the fine leaf, and then mow it with a deck mower to cut the seed heads off. So basically, if you've got a reel here, and if the seed head comes up above where the bed knife to half of the reel, it will not go in there. This will just run it over and flop that down, and then it'll flop right back up after you go by, and you'll have seed heads sticking up. And I've seen that on a lot of golf courses, and it is unsightly. So you'll have to come with the flat deck mower to chop that off. It is quite a bit of work. This is a growing grass, and you can see this is at the Women's Open, and these guys are working pretty hard to get that fly mowed, and you had to fly mow it 3 times during the week during the U.S. Open, even at that high height of cut. So it can be work. If you cut more than a third off, you're going to get little scalped areas. If the grass gets above maybe 2.5, 3 inches, a golf ball will go right down in there. It doesn't hold a golf ball up at all, so that's one of its disadvantages, or an advantage if you want to make hard playing conditions. 3-inch Bermuda grass is almost impossible to play golf out of in the rough, where a lot of other grasses you can have 3 inches and it's not even considered big rough, where they were going 6 inches on the Kentucky bluegrass at Oakmont. So when you go to your key, it's going to key out to page 18. So it keys out from folded, and you notice it also keys out to rolled. I would say it's not as rolled as it is folded, but when we go through on the next slide, I'll go over some of the major features. So it keys out folded and rolled, but I would say it's a folded grass. The ligule is short, 3 millimeters, and it does have a fringe of hair on there. The auricle is absent. The growth habit is aggressive rhizomes and aggressive stolons, and I'll show you some pictures of those rhizomes. And rhizomes, I think, is the strongest characteristic of this grass. Rhizomes are really like an insurance policy. They stay down in the ground. They do a really nice job of protecting the grass. One of the things about Bermuda grass that I like, it developed in Africa, and it's very drought resistant. It will go dormant. It's not dead. It's got these rhizomes down there. When it gets water, it'll grow. So you can hold back on the water. You don't have to slam the water to it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes of turf managers in the southeast. They feel they have to just water the heck out of the Bermuda grass. And I think that as we move forward, it's going to be a much better grass for drought conditions than everybody thinks. See, we don't have to have green fairways all the time. In fact, I think it's a better surface when it's dried out a little bit and a little crunchy. It will survive from that. The sheath is flattened, again sparsely hairy. The collar is continuous. I don't normally look at the blade has a sharp point, 1.5 to 3 millimeters wide. This is where there's a lot of variability. You want to be aware that this grass has been bred quite a bit. There are common Bermuda grasses, which are a more open leaf blade where you need to put primo and really maintain them to get thick. And then we've got Tiff Dwarf, we've got Tiff Eagle, we've got Champion, so we've got really low-growing Bermuda grasses now that we can be used on putting greens, and that's something that our guest speaker, Pat O'Brien, the USGA rep, is going to talk about in the second section of our Grass of the Week. And the seed head. And that seed head is a spike. It comes up, and there's 3 to 5 whorls that come off the top. And I think this is one of the big unsightly parts of this grass. And controlling that seed head is something chemically Primo and some of our other growth regulators can do and will be doing more in the future. So there is some chemical mowing done on these grasses, and that is beneficial, particularly a grass that grows this fast. This is a grass that some golf courses, Forest Creek, will mow 7 days a week. Most are on 3 days a week. If you get a rain on one of those days, you can have a lot of trouble keeping it mowed. So superintendents will watch the weather. If they see a big rain event coming, they'll put some Primo out, so just to keep up with the mowing. It is an aggressive lateral grass. This is Bay Hill. One of my former students, Antoine, and he's running the grading. And this is, believe it or not, this is Bermuda grass, putting green. So very fine, nice turf. But those stolons that are going sideways, it helps to cut. So this is a vertical mowing machine, and they're going to vertical cut this in 2 directions and be pretty aggressive to get the thatch out and to stimulate new growth on these greens right after the tournament. A lot of research is going on in Raleigh. There's Dr. Melody Frazier again, and you can see some of the seeded Bermuda grasses. This is something that the home lawn industry you should be aware of. There are a few seeded Bermuda grasses now that have pretty good quality. I think that they're working on those a lot. You're going to see in the future better quality, but right now I would say that the vegetatively propagated by sod or stolons or sprigs is going to be your way to go for the best grasses, particularly the really improved greens grade Bermuda grasses. But some of the home lawn stuff you can do all right with seeded, and that's going to really change the industry. We're going to be able to seed home lawns and have reasonable quality, and we're starting to see that in both Bermuda grass and zoysia grass. See, as it starts to come out of dormancy, it's not as pretty. Weeds will get in if it gets open, but you can see that the plots are pretty good. So Dr. Frazier's doing a lot of nice work up in Roseville, and you'll enjoy that field trip. There's the rhizomes I'm talking about. So you can have pretty aggressive, even at this low height of cut. This is at Bulls Bay, that second slide that I showed you, Bermuda grass, putting greens, and you can see these rhizomes, and these will grow out. And this is a fairly young grass, but these will grow out and also form new grass, and then we'll have stones going across the top. So that aggressive lateral growth is useful. It can cause grain and some unsightly stuff, so we need to manage it like Antoine was doing at Bay Hill. But under the proper management, you can have grains that most golfers won't know the difference between the Bermuda grass and the bent grass. Again, our stolons, aggressively coming over the edge. You need to do some work on that if you're going to have a high maintenance attention to detail. And these will grow, so you can put those in other areas, till them in, and it's useful. But again, you have to decide with your members and yourself where you want to be on that. And in a home lawn, under pretty intensive maintenance. Bermuda grass, this is out front of Hewitt Hall, our horticulture building. You can see it's edged up and it's mowed. The stripes don't show very well, but it's a nice, good-looking lawn. You can have a nice croquet match out there, throw the football around. It's an inviting place. So in a high-maintenance area, where you're going to get people, traffic walking on it, it's by far the best grass. And that's it for this week. So Pat O'Brien and I are going to have a little conversation about especially the new putting greens that are Bermuda grass. So listen to that, and we'll have a quiz on that next time. Thanks. I'm with my guest here, Pat O'Brien. Pat is the USGA agronomist for the Southeast region, along with Chris Hartwiger, and he's going to be talking about Bermuda grass. And the first question, Pat, that I wanted to ask you is, what way do you use to identify this grass?
Michael, with my territory being, in the Southeast region, practically every golf course, has Bermuda grass on their tees and their fairways and rough. I don't even think about it hardly. And
so one of the things where I find it difficult to distinguish Bermuda grass is sometimes when it's on putting greens, when you've got bent grass putting greens and some Bermuda grass putting greens that are getting to be hard to tell from bent.
Boy, good point, Michael. But however, one thing when you stick your soil profiler in there, like I do, examining these greens, boy, you can instantly tell what an ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass, number one, by its short root system. Typically, these have just very dwarfed root, 1 to 2 inches long, and the other distinguishing factor is the pencil-like stolons that are growing laterally across the surface there, and you can easily distinguish those also when you're taking a profile.
When a golfer looks in the hole, that's when I usually can tell the first time I take my ball out.
There you see all those little stolons, those pencil points.
In your opinion, where do you think the best use of Bermuda grass is, in the home lawn or even on the golf course?
Well, Michael, of course, my favorite place for it is, of course, on the golf course. And now, including the putting greens with these great new ultra-dwarf Bermuda grasses, tees, fairways, putting greens, roughs, no doubt about it. Those are but my all-time favorite place is the putting greens now.
Yeah.
With these superior surfaces now that are possible. And as you are probably well aware, the biggest single trend going on now in the South region is the taking out the bent grass greens in most of the areas and installing these new ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass.
Now, Pat, where do you think a place where somebody would be making a mistake to use Bermuda grass would be?
I would say the biggest single worry is the threat of cold temperature damage with the ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass. And, of course, I think the areas in the Southeast region where these will not infiltrate significantly are going to be in the Western Carolina mountains in Tennessee, but anywhere along the coastal areas in Piedmont, and I think here over the next 10 years, you'll see them go up all the way from, Atlanta, all the way up Interstate 85 through Greenville, Charlotte, Greensboro, into the Raleigh area, and I think the northern extension will be probably up around to the Virginia Beach area.
Now, Pat, one of the other things I'm asking everybody is, what's your favorite Bermuda grass story?
Oh, boy. Nobody's ever asked me that question. Let's see, I think my favorite Bermuda grass story now would probably relate to my new favorite Bermuda grass that I like. And it happens to be the new emerald Bermuda grass, which is what's developed by Mr. Morris Brown from the Champion Turf Farm people. It's a very fine-textured, all rhizomatous, which is all underground stems. There doesn't appear to be many above-ground stolons, which is very unique for Bermuda grass. And this is the prettiest Bermuda grass that I've ever seen, and it can be used on tees and in fairways and on putting greens and in fine-cut chipping areas all around the greens. It can be cut from very low on a putting green all the way to tee height, I first saw the grass down at the River Club on Kiowa Island last year. Was the first planting of the grass in the United States. And when I went back this year to see it this summer, I just couldn't believe my eyes, just how beautiful this golf course was.
Great.
With this Bermuda grass. And the populations of the grass, it was all totally, what can I say, it's a hybrid grass, so every plant was identical, which it just doesn't get much better than that when you're on a golf course and everything is a hybrid and exactly the same.
Now, does it resemble emerald zoysia grass in some way, like the name, or is that just for the namesake?
Yes, I think there must have been some confusion there, unfortunately, but that it was named at the same name of like you say, a popular old zoysia grass, but it really has no relationship at all to it.
So the last question I've been asking everybody is, what's the future of Bermuda grass? And I know you've touched on that a little bit, but if you could summarize, that'd be great.
Boy, Michael, sure. I see nothing but the house of pleasure for Bermuda grass here in the future in the southeast region. We are in the midst here of return to Bermuda grasses on putting greens again in the southeast region. We've kind of gone full cycle from the early days of golf in the south, where the greens were all originally Bermuda grass, prior to that sand, of course. And then, in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and 90s, bent grass was certainly the favorite of the golfer. But now here we're seeing the return with these new ultra dwarfs, and basically quite unique. This trend is being led throughout the South by the low to the medium budget golf courses. Seldom do these types of clubs lead trends. Usually it's the high-end clubs that, lead these trends to these newer and better grasses, but not in this case. And the reason was because that golfers at the high-end private clubs, Bermuda grass greens kind of had a stigma to them, and that people didn't think they were as good as bent grass. But now that stigma, I think, is going to really be broken, particularly once we get these high-end private clubs in the Atlanta area start installing them, and that's going to start happening next year. And, of course, the famous East Lake Club is going to have it and put it in, and again, after the bent grass green performance was not so good this past year. And then, of course, the Atlanta Athletic Club is going to put it in here for the 2011 PGA Championship. This will be the first major championship that ever will be held on an ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass. And once these clubs get these ultra-dwarfs installed, then the wave of these grasses going up I-85 and going through the Carolinas to other high-end private clubs will move very, very quickly.
Wow, well, we've come a long way from coastal Bermuda grass and common Bermuda grass.
We sure have.
Thank you very much, Pat. I'm going to wrap this up, and that's Pat O'Brien, the USGA regional agronomist for the Southeast. The Grass of the Week music is the Sand Hills Community College Jazz Band, directed by Tim Haley.